Hello and welcome. My name's Claire Halliday and I'm the face behind Claire Halliday Virtual Assistant. This morning I'm going to be talking to Jennifer Rawlinson, who is the director and founder of Flourish in Mind. We're going to have a chat about mental health. The Time to Change, Time to Talk Day is happening on Thursday the 4th of February, where the focus is on the power of small, because however you have a conversation about mental health, whether it's a quick text, a virtual coffee morning, or a socially distanced walk and talk, it has the power to make a big difference. My awareness of mental health started many, many years ago, but it was only in October 2017 that I put my head above the parapet and became actively involved through the company I worked for at the time. They were supporting Young Minds, which is a charity committed to improving children's well-being and mental health. And to mark World Mental Health Day on the 10th of October, we were all encouraged to wear something yellow and to do some fundraising. The business then introduced mental health champions, and in August 2018, I completed the training to become a mental health champion and arranged regular awareness raising events such as coffee breaks, where we could talk about our experiences of mental health, and it was someone colleagues could come to talk to if they needed a little bit of extra support. I'm not a mental health first aider, but I was able to signpost colleagues to various resources, including our employee assistance programme, which many businesses now have. The business also supported Time to Change, Time to Talk Day, where we were encouraged to stop for a break and have a chat. I'm no longer working for the company, but my passion to break down the stigma attached to mental health has not faded. Mental health is very much in the news at present, with stats such as 1 in 4 of us experiencing a mental health problem at some point during the course of a year. It can be difficult to have a conversation with someone regarding their mental health, especially when so many of us are now working remotely. Since starting up my business as a virtual assistant, I've been trying to build my network around mental health, and it was through networking that I met Jennifer, who, as I've said, is the director of Flourish in Mind and a mental health first aid trainer. Jennifer worked in the corporate world for 13 years and absolutely understands the pressure people face, and therefore takes a very pragmatic approach to the work she does. Jennifer's experience as a manager has led her to want to do more in terms of providing education within the workplace around mental health and ill health, how to start those all-important first conversations, how to build trust with the team, and be able to provide relevant support to a team member who is struggling. We spend a third of our lives in work, and having that support network is such a vital part of recovery from mental ill health. It's therefore important that people feel supported within the workplace, and it's just as important for managers to feel they have the tools, the confidence and the capability to support their teams. One of the biggest barriers Jennifer has found is that people worry that they will say or do something wrong, and therefore they avoid the conversation completely. Jennifer is truly passionate about supporting people, particularly in the workplace environment, and has kindly agreed to talk to me about what people can do if they notice that someone is not quite themselves, how to start the conversation, and also to give us some advice on what to do if someone starts a conversation just out of the blue about how they're feeling. Hi Jennifer.
Hi.
Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today. I have a few questions prepared, off by giving a little bit of background to if we are in an office, and I know it's really difficult at the moment because we're all working remotely, but if you are picking up that someone's maybe suffering a little bit and they're not quite themselves, maybe showing some signs of mental ill health, how would you approach having a conversation with that person?
So, I think the first thing is to ask them, how they're feeling and try and focus on feelings as well. And I think it's slightly easier because there's so many people that are under a lot of pressure and stress. They're experiencing things now that they've never felt before. And I'm not saying it's easy to talk, but it is becoming more of a norm when you ask people, are you okay? That people are seeming to feel more able to say, actually, I'm not. Now, that's not always the case, but, you know, just ask somebody, first of all, how they're doing, how they're getting on, because there's, you know, that shared experience that we're all experiencing. Yes, of course, we're experiencing it different ways, but there is that shared experience to some degree, which is, it's a great starting point. And going on from that then is, if ever you know, if you get that gut feel that someone's not quite right, it's asking them, but then asking again. And it might be that it's not, they might not open up straight away. This might be an ongoing process. But just remember that often your gut feeling's right. So
Andy, who is not quite a people person, and they find it a bit awkward to have that conversation. Or equally, a member of their team could be awkward about approaching the conversation. Is there anything that you would say or advise that people in that situation, what they could do?
yeah, it is difficult. And you know what? Some people find these conversations much more straightforward than others, because we've all got different skill sets. So it's not a bad thing that if you're finding that you do struggle, you know, with these conversations. I think the first thing I'd say is try not to panic. Because if it's something that you find difficult, that doesn't come naturally, of course you're going to feel a little bit anxious before you go into having that conversation. So I think preparation's really key, really important, and just giving yourself some breathing space before you approach that conversation. And just be really mindful of how you might come across as well. And just have that knowledge that you don't need to have all the answers.
Because unlike you, I'm only a mental health champion, whereas you're like a mental health first aider. And there is a difference, whereas, you know, I could point people to or signpost people to various resources. Can you just maybe give us a wee bit of a wee bit of background as to what your role as a first aider is?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's multifaceted. There's lots of elements to it. A big element of it is around supporting in a crisis. So this is where you've really spotted that there is something going on. So, you know, you'd have those skills as to how to de-escalate it. And a lot of what we do, you know, irrespective of what that crisis is, it's all about remaining calm. And you might inside be flapping, but it's sort of maintaining that, I guess, that sort of swan approach that you look all kind of elegant and calm on the surface, even though beneath the water you probably are doing a bit of that. And the reason why that's so important is the person that you are supporting is in some form of distress, and it might not be a crisis situation, but there is still some form of emotional distress going on. And quite often, because we don't generally talk openly about how we're feeling, we often keep those thoughts closed in. That it could be the very first time that that person's talking as well about what it is they're experiencing. So no matter how trained you are, I think it's just acknowledging that just being calm is so huge in being, you know, that can just be a huge comfort, and almost that sigh of relief that that person said what's going on and they're not being judged for it. Got time to talk day, that it's all about facilitating these conversations. It doesn't matter if you've not got all the answers. It doesn't matter if you've not got the solutions. It doesn't matter if you actually say to the person, you know, I really don't know how to help you, but just know that I'm here to support you.
And I think that's the other thing as well, isn't it? That we're like, I know, like, I'm always scared in case I say or do the wrong thing. And I think being open and transparent and honest like that just puts everybody at ease, doesn't it? That if you say something like that, I don't have the answers, the person is getting support. They know that you're not an expert, but you're there, you're wanting to help them. And
it's knowing that you could have all the training in the world, but you could still be faced with something.
Tend to offer a lot of advice for fear of saying the wrong thing, but then you can signpost them to other people And again, when I was in my last position, we had an employee assistance program where we could refer colleagues to trained counsellors, and that was always my backup. You know, they've got more training than I have.
Yeah,
You can signpost them, and I think a lot of organisations are signing up for these EAPs now. How are you finding things like? Are you getting a lot of companies asking for mental health first aid training? Has there been an increase in the last year with lockdown?
Yeah, massively, because people are more alert to the fact that actually we do need to do more to help people. And for me, mental health first aid, yes, of course, it's about helping other people, but for me, it's as much about that education around understanding mental health and well-being for you.
Yeah.
And that emphasis around self-care and all the things that you can do proactively for your own well-being. Because if you don't look after you, then you're not in a good position to help other people either. And I think, you know, what you just said before as well, Claire, was interesting around that fear that you're going to say the wrong thing to somebody else. But, you know, you're absolutely right. You know, it's not around being an expert and providing loads of advice and things like that. More than anything, it's that support and that comfort that people need. And, you know, in some instances, it could be wrong to provide advice. And some key things, Claire, that we would always train in on that point, because that view, it's shared by so many people. People are frightened of doing or saying the wrong thing to make that situation, you know, worse than it already is. But what we'll always advise is that talking is good. If somebody is suicidal, if they're at that point, that talking is better than not at all. So far better to start a conversation than to avoid it completely through fear that you're going to do or say the wrong thing. Because remember, that person is at rock bottom at that point. And, you know, the thoughts that they've got, that they're experiencing at that time. But, you know, remembering that those feelings of suicide are temporary as well. They're not going to feel like that forever. And actually, by talking to that person, you are literally keeping them alive. So anything that you say cannot be worse than leaving that person. Try, you know, thinking around that to give people that confidence that talking is a good thing. And, you know, another kind of scenario that I get people to think around is, if you've got a lot going on, and, you know, do you ever have a rant, you know, whether it's your other half or a friend, you pick up the phone and you just rant for half an hour. They don't even have to give you any answers. You've probably come off that call with no solutions to anything, but just get it off your chest. It really helps to lower those levels of stress and anxiety that we're feeling. And again, it has a similar impact for somebody that's feeling suicidal. To talk and actually just get it out there can just be that sense of relief. And again, just by getting them talking can really help to de-escalate the emotion.
Something to help people who are in that situation. And just by making a difference to one person, or just a small difference, that's where that's where I want to try and help.
Starting to come through in education, it is being recognised. You know, even, you know, my girls in nursery, they are learning around emotions and things like that. They're age 2 and 3. They use a feeling spoon. So at home they will pass me a spoon and ask mummy how she's feeling today. Which is it's funny, but actually it's serious as well. And it's good that these messages are being brought in from, you know, as young as 2 years old, that it's the norm to talk about how you're feeling today, and they can choose whether they're feeling sad or happy or excited or tired or angry, and they talk about why, which is great. And I think that, you know, the better we get at it, and it becomes the norm to talk about our emotions, because it's a funny thing, isn't it, that it's such a taboo subject about something that makes humans human, because having emotions is part of being a human. You know, I always think, well, we've all got a brain, and our brain can become unwell at times, just as any other part of our body, but it's not as easy to talk about. I think for me, what's more of a challenge is you know, there was certainly no education around well-being and mental health when I was in school, and I think these generations that have never had that. And the world is changing now as well. It's very different to how it was 20 years ago. And, you know, people are suffering, you know, and I don't just mean in relation to the pandemic, but, you know, the other ways that the world has changed too. There's a lot more to deal with and a lot more to manage. And when you've got that coupled with the lack of education, for me, that is you know, such a huge challenge to get that education out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so just to kind of finish off, Jennifer, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but what kind of things do you do for your own mental health? You know, we're all encouraged to do a couple of things every day that we enjoy. I try and get out with the dogs, out into the fresh air. I love seeing the countryside changing with the seasons. I try and read every day. And I don't know, something else that usually, if I've got time, whether it's cooking or watching, binge watching on some telly or whatever, what kind of things do you do?
So the month of January, I did Red January. So it's alongside Sport in Mind. So this is Run Every Day January. Now, I'm not a runner, but it was changed this year that you've got to do some form of physical activity every day in January. And I've never stuck to any of these challenges before, but I did it and got to the 31st. I'd done something every single day in January. So I was really proud. But the thing that really stuck with me, because fitness is always something that I struggle with keeping up to and finding the motivation to do it. Much as I know how good it is for me, it's really hard to do it. The thing that kept me on board with it, I was tracking my mood at the same time, and just seeing the impact it has on my mood was just phenomenal. That was so over the Christmas break, I think I was a bit run down at the end of the year as well, and I started picking up doing a bit more exercise in prep, ready for Red January starting. But the days that I had done no exercise, my mood was just low, lethargic, couldn't be bothered. And just the comparison, you know, actually on that day. So that's a huge thing for me. And this isn't about going out running and doing anything huge. I go with how I feel. So some days it'll be yoga stretches, which feel quite nice at the end of the day when I'm tired. Sometimes it's just getting out and going for a walk at lunchtime for an hour. Or half an hour. And I think that's the other thing, it's don't set those goals too big. Because you set yourself up for failure.
Indeed, I was going to say that, and you feel as though you've failed because you've not done it, and it's all about not being too harsh on ourselves at the moment either. And just finding time to do something, you know, whether it's reading a book or watching an episode of your favorite Netflix series, or taking that time out to have a bath. And I was doing a mental health first aid course last week, and they shared some brilliant examples. You know, they were doing weekend welly walks and that kind of thing. But one lady talked very much about she has a Monday night pamper night. She has a bath, and she said that she usually did that. Well, she never had baths really, generally, because it was always a quick shower. And if she did, she was having a proper soak, it was saved for the weekend as like a treat. And it's like, why is it a treat? And we often see self-care as being a treat, as being very extravagant, but actually we need to do it to look after us. She brought in Monday night's bath night because the start of the week, and it's something to look forward to get through a Monday. That's lovely. That I really like. Even turning your phone off at 8 o'clock, that's classed as self-care. You don't have to do anything else. That's still self-care, and it makes a difference to how you're feeling. I need time to cut off at the end of the day. I really, you know, I'm a strong advocate for this. And the last few weeks I've been really, really busy, but I have to have time to myself as well. and the phone, I actually leave it now at the other side of the room.
Limiting your exposure to the news as well,
Indeed.
which is generally quite
Massive.
negative.
Uh-huh.
And things like, you know, starting your day on a positive, because if the first thing you do, and so many people do this, the first thing they do is they switch on the news, then that kind of, that's got your mindset then for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can switch on your mind and you're faced with something positive, you're in a much better position to then deal with the negatives that sort of crop up as well.
Yeah.
That would be a top tip.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to have a chat with me. I've really enjoyed talking to you as always. And I've had an idea which I'm going to share anyway. Maybe we could do some kind of exercise fitness thing together to be accountable, but when the weather's a little bit warmer.
Yes, that would be brilliant. That would be fantastic. Yeah,
okay.
I'd do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thanks, Claire.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.